Welcome to Strategic Analytics for Leaders. In this video, we will create some quick reports and present data in visually appealing formats with the use of tables, graphs, and dashboards.
Greetings and welcome to Module 3. In this video, we're going to be walking through some of the steps needed to create charts, change charts, create pivot tables, and insert items that enhance your overall workbook with visual appeal, such as through images, screenshots, shapes, text boxes, smart art, or word art. All of those features combined can really help you create versions of infographics that we see, and being able to visually depict data is so important to help your audience understand the message behind your data and to help them draw conclusions about the data. So first things first, we're going to work with some sample data to create some basic charts, and we'll be walking you through the different types as well as some of the general layouts and styles associated with them. So first things first, if we look at, I have some sample data here for ABC Company. The sales are listed by month in terms of projected versus actual dollars. So I hope you're almost envisioning what a sample chart might look like here. So we're going to come on over to Insert, and we have a Charts group within the Insert tab. So I want you to see that there's a number of different types of charts that we have available to us. Column charts, and I'm going to walk through some of the descriptions here. Visually compare values across a few categories. Click the arrow to see different types. So we have, and this is just very quickly comparing it, you'll see I just highlighted over the 2D clustered column and showing us with the months listed across the x-axis, the dollar values listed across the y-axis, and we're seeing the projected values shown in blue and the actual values shown in orange. Let's compare this to a stacked column. Compares parts of a whole and shows how parts of a whole change over time. So this isn't necessarily the best one because the actual versus projected, those two numbers combined, that's not a whole number. That's not what we're looking for here. So this stacked one isn't necessarily going to make sense. This is the 100% stacked. So again, when you're comparing actual versus projected, this type of chart does not necessarily make sense either, because this one is comparing the percentages. So what percentage is $140,100 out of the whole for the month of January? That doesn't make sense either. That's not what we're going for. So I would suggest that we look at either the 2D or 3D clustered. This one, 3D column, is even more difficult to read because it's stacking them kind of along a z-axis and making it a depth value here. So I don't think that one makes sense either. So I would focus on either of these two. Let's take a look at what happens when we examine it in terms of 2D bars. So again, this probably isn't the best way to lay it out because it's listing the months along the y-axis, top to bottom, and the dollar values along the x-axis. Very difficult to read and not necessarily meaningful. It's not going to help our readers and our viewers understand the data here. Okay? Pie charts, when we're working with this number of values, so 12 different months comparing projected, again, not the best way to do it. So let's stick with, just going to stick with the simple. Okay, so this puts our sample chart in, and I want you to see that once we insert the chart, we now have two new tabs up along the top of our Excel ribbon. We have a Chart Tools Design tab, and we have a Chart Tools Format tab. So if I flip back to the Design tab, you'll see within the center we have a Chart Styles group. These are just different formats, pre-packaged formats that we can use to examine our data. So you'll see that it has to do with how the colors of the columns are set up, the background colors, the types of labels. I kind of like that one, helps us see it a little bit better. Now within here we can drag and move our chart. We can expand it to increase the size, and we can also make changes to the chart layout. So you'll see as I hover over these, yikes, that's difficult to read. We don't see the actual values there. So far I'm liking layout 1. I don't like that one. You'll see that it's an art and a science as we look through here. There's no one right answer. It really has to do with the type of information you're trying to convey. I'm going to stick with the first one. And what questions and answers that you can get from this data. Okay, so this visually we can see those months where the projected sales was higher than the actual, so the blue is higher than the orange for the months of January, February, and March. We then switch in April, actual is higher than our projected. For the month of April, for the month of August, September, October, November. Okay, so there's values that we can pull out of here. Looking at this, we have a placeholder for a chart title. I'm going to say ABC Company Sales 2015 Projected versus Actual. Okay? So as you saw, I kind of walked you through the process. It's not a precise one, and it's going to be rare in which you could walk through a textbook and the textbook will tell you the precise steps to choose, choose this particular chart, set up this particular layout, change these particular colors. But really, until you're working with your own data, it becomes more of an art. It's less of a science, where you need to decide which chart makes the most sense for your data. Okay? So we examined setting up a chart initially, we examined some of the chart styles, we examined some of the layouts. Now, you do have the option, of course, of choosing your colors. So I'll just, for example, switch it. So if you didn't like them, you could switch it to all oranges and yellows, greens and blues. Okay. We also have the option of saying, I want to change the shape fill for all of these greens. I don't want it to be that particular green. I want it to be that yellow. So you don't have to choose those predefined ones. I'll choose this shape fill, and perhaps I want a purple. Okay? You're able to select each type of data element and make changes to that color, border, background, etc. Okay? Now I'm going to examine, so this is, I'm going to relabel this and we'll just say column chart. Okay? Let's set up a sample set of data for a pie chart. Let's see. So let's say you had a survey in which you surveyed a large group of folks and asked about their preferred method of communication. So you're going to have a discrete list: email, phone, in person, and let's call it social media. Okay? And let's say that I'm going to make up some numbers here. 547 said email. 385 said okay. So I have a discrete list, I have values, and I'm going to have, in this case, a total, right? So let's see what this would look like using a different type of chart. If we examined some of the 2D, I need to select that area. Yeah, this is starting to look a little bit better. Or even a donut. This one's cool. So I'm able to set up a type of pie chart in which we're examining of the whole, so of our whole of 1678 respondents, what percentage came back with email, phone, in-person, and social media. So I'm going to make some changes to the layout so that we're including perfect. That's another option that looks okay to me. We're seeing the percentages. I want a title. I don't like it like that. I think I really like this first or second. Okay, so we can see the percentage of respondents. Now, it put a placeholder in, again, for our title, and I'm going to change that: preferred method of communication by type. N equals 1678. So that's the total number of respondents, so that we can see precisely the percentage of our total that responded with each of these types of communication. Now, you might say to me, or to, it would make sense to have the actual values. So let's take a look at add chart element. We could include it like that, or let's see some of the different styles and formats here. Format data series. Format data labels. I want to show the value as well. Yes. I'm liking this. So let's, well, we could also just choose value here. Okay, it's not a perfect science, it's an art. So I put this together to show the value, the number of respondents, and the corresponding percentage. You might like that, or you might say, no, I'd like to change it around. But that's where we're able to come into here. If we want to get those values back, we can say show the values. So that clears it up a little bit. Okay, so that's an example of a pie. Again, different than our column in which we were comparing actuals versus projected. Okay, this is part to a whole. We could, so I'm going to move that one up. I'm going to shrink it down because I'd like to examine what would it look like if we charted this using a different format. So insert, do any of these make sense? I don't think so. Preferred method value? No, I don't think so. Let's see what would happen if we selected there. That could work. It's showing the values, it's showing the numbers, but it's not necessarily giving it to us in terms of the whole, right? We can see the values, we can see which one has the largest email, but we can't necessarily see the percentage of the whole. So it might make sense to have both. So I'm going to move the chart over, shrink it down, and we can again relabel and that's fine. So we represent our data in two different ways. Still the same numbers, just telling a different story or depicting it visually in a different way for our audience. Okay, I'm going to do one more thing. Insert recommended chart. So we want to select our data here, and they're giving us, so this is an interesting one. If we select our data first and then choose that recommended charts, it's going to break out 3 different types, 2 of which were the ones that we've already set up, right? The column and the pie. So the third option would be to set it up as a bar chart. The bars go horizontally, columns go up and down. That's the difference. Okay, so if I click OK, it automatically puts it in. I'll shrink it down, and I'll move it right into here. Now keep in mind, we can copy our titles, paste them in, and now we have 3 different types of charts using that same data set. Okay? Next piece here that I'm going to walk you through is a version of a pivot table. So let me set up some sample data for you. Okay, let's see how we do. Hmm? Okay, so we have some sample data. Sales data by region, salesperson, item, month sold. Okay? Let's use this to see if we can ask some questions and get some answers about our sales. So who's our top salesperson? What month did we have the most sales? What item is selling the most? Which region is doing the best? So these are all, just questions off the top of my head. So if we come up to Insert and choose Pivot Table, Excel is going to ask us, choose the data that you'd like to analyze. So it automatically recognizes this range, and it's going to put it into a new worksheet. Okay. So this is what a pivot table looks like. You select your fields along the right, and it automatically starts organizing it. So region and sale. I want to see this as, well, first of all, I want to see it no calculations on it. I want to see it sorted. Largest to smallest. Okay, so the north region is doing the best. We could also, I wanted you to see this, show values as percentage of column total. Okay, I didn't do any calculations. I'm letting the pivot table help me out here. I'll say no calculation and it'll bring it back. Okay, I'm going to put some. Okay, now what if I got rid of region, but instead had the month sold? Okay, again, show me. So my top months for sales were April, May, and June. Interesting. Lowest sales, July and August. Great. Now I'm getting some information. Let's see what our top items were. Coats sold the most. But really, I need to know who is our top performer. And sure enough, if I sort this, I'm able to see Jim is our top performer, right? But there's other pieces. So Jim's primarily selling coats and shoes. So I want you to just see how I'm quickly able to make changes to the data based on this pivot table. I'm also going to bring this up. I just want to see, for example, those sales in the East region, Sue and Ellen. So if I wanted to get into more detail about what Sue sold, I could double click. It's going to open up another worksheet showing me her sales, which add up to 3,500. So I hope you're able to see that quickly making some changes, I'm able to answer different types of questions about my data. Now I'm going to uncheck here. I'm going to bring, so now I have months running across the top, and I'm going to check off. So interesting. So now I can see exactly who's selling what in which months. There's no, again, not an art or a science. It's a combination of the two. What questions are you trying to answer? What is the best layout to help you get that information? It's at work not going to be a textbook example in which you can go through a series of steps. You're really going to need to play with your data to see what makes the most sense visually to be represented here. Let me get rid of the okay. So let's bring it back to simply items, okay? I'm going to leave it at that, but just again, a very simple way that you can quickly analyze your data in a more visual format, and we can even use our starting data to create some pivot charts. So I'll quickly pivot chart. Our sales by salesperson. So it quickly just set up a chart automatically for me there. All right. We'll spend a lot more time going through exact examples as we move through some of the activities in this module, but I hope this was a quick overview for you of both the charts, the pivot tables, and the pivot charts. Now, last thing that I wanted to spend a quick moment on is just reminding you of all of the different features that we have available to us on our Insert tab. So you can, of course, insert online pictures. So if you wanted to have a picture of so I just quickly brought in that picture of coats because that was one of our sales items and dragged it over. We can also insert shapes. So think about that. If you're preparing a report that you want to give some visual appeal, any of the same features that we worked with in Word or PowerPoint are still available to us here. You can add any of those shapes as we did before. Keep this in mind as you're creating or thinking about creating infographics. Our shapes might be one way that we can help incorporate some of the visual appeal to our documents and our workbooks. Insert. Finally, you of course have the ability to include screenshots. I'm not going to. And then last but not least, our smart art graphics as well. Okay? If there's a particular narrative that you'd like to say, so overall for the fiscal year 2015, Jim continues to serve as our top seller within ABC Company. Top sales include coats within Jim's region. So you're able to provide narrative. In this text box, you can move around exactly where you'd like it. You can apply any formatting features that you're accustomed to doing. So we could put a shape fill. We could put an outline on it. Okay? So I hope this was helpful. Let me just continue labeling here. So that was our column chart. Here's our pie chart. Pivot drill down. Move that to the end. Move this over here. Raw data. Pivot table. And finally, our pivot chart and images. Thanks so much for watching. Hope this was helpful for you. We're just scratching the surface of all of the features available within Excel when you're doing analytics. Thank you so much.
I'm glad you were able to watch. Having the ability to visually present your data really brings it to life and helps tell a story. Visual representations such as tables, graphs, and dashboards support organizational leaders and help to make complex data easier to understand.